Story 1. I've worked night security at the old Mid-State Distribution Center for 6 months, monitoring 12 camera feeds in a glassed-in booth that smells like stale coffee and paranoia. The job is supposed to be easy. Just stare at warehouses, confirm nothing moves, and log errors. But on the night of the equinox, the cameras started lying to me. It began at 2:17 a.m., when camera 7, a thermal lens covering the east dock, flickered offline. Routine, I thought. The system glitches weekly. But when it rebooted, the feed showed an empty concrete corridor, except for a shadow pooled near the third pallet rack. The shadow had shape. A hunched spine, a head bowed forward like a question mark. I zoomed in. Nothing. The dock was bare. I radioed maintenance. "Check the camera," they said. "It's probably a lens flare." I walked the perimeter, flashlight cutting through the black beyond the booth. The east dock was silent, the air heavy with the smell of closed spaces. Back at my desk, the shadow was gone. Then the silence began. At 3:03 a.m., camera 3's audio feed cut out. Not the sound, all sound. The warehouse fell into a vacuum, the hum of refrigeration units and distant traffic vanishing as if someone had thrown a mute switch. My own breathing echoed in my ears. I stared at camera 3's live feed, a security door, sealed. I glanced away, and in my peripheral vision, the door shifted. Just a flicker, like a ripple in water. When I turned back, it was still. I stood, keys jangling in my hand. The door was locked. Always locked. But as I approached, the silence deepened, pressing against my skull. My flashlight trembled as I swept it across the floor. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a thread. Just the door, solid and cold. When I returned to the booth, the audio feeds were restored. But camera 7 was active again, and it wasn't pointing at the dock. Someone, something, had adjusted the angle. The lens now framed the ceiling, where condensation streaked the tiles. And something else. A smear, like a body dragged upward, leaving a smudge in the dust. I called the office. No one answered. Tech support said the system showed no tampering. "Cameras can't reposition themselves," they said. But mine had. At 5:12 a.m., the feed stabilized. All angles showed empty halls, empty docks, empty silence. The system logs showed no anomalies. My shift ended at dawn, but I didn't leave. I sat through the sunrise, waiting for the cameras to whisper again. They never did. But 2 weeks later, I quit. The manager claims the warehouse is haunted by nothing. The cameras, he says, are pristine. But in my final log, I wrote this. At 3:03 a.m., something in the silence is learning how to move. And I know, because it moved through my screens, and I felt it breathe. The coffee still tastes like fear. Story 2. I'm not a superstitious person. I've spent 8 years watching empty lobbies, dim hallways, and the endless glow of surveillance monitors. I've learned to trust the steady hum of the CCTV rack, the predictable flicker of a hallway camera that never seems to miss a thing. That's why, on the night of the fire alarm test, the silence felt like a weight pressing against my skin. It was 2 a.m. when the building went dark. The main power had been cut for a routine inspection, and the backup generators kicked in with a soft whine. My station, a cramped room at the end of the east wing, was lit only by the pale blue of the monitors. The lobby, the parking garage, the stairwells, all displayed in perfect black and white, the occasional grain of dust drifting across the lenses like tiny ghosts. The first thing I noticed was the lobby camera. The feed was static, just the empty marble floor, a lone potted plant, the reflective surface of a glass door. I leaned forward, squinting. In the far corner, something moved, a faint ripple, like a curtain being brushed. I clicked zoom, and the feed sharpened. The corner was empty. No one was there. My heart thudded, but I told myself it was just a trick of the light, a stray reflection from the generator's low hum. I flipped to camera 3, the corridor that ran parallel to the service stairs. A thin line of yellow light from the emergency exit sign cut across the tiles. The footage was clean. The hallway was deserted. Then a shadow slipped across the frame, a dark shape moving from left to right, pausing just beyond the doorframe before vanishing. I replayed the clip twice. Each time the movement was there, slower, a little more defined, like the outline of a person never quite fully formed. I checked camera 5, the parking garage. The feed showed rows of empty slots, the occasional stray car in the far corner. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the building's ventilation was whispering, barely audible. Suddenly, a set of headlights flickered on in a spot I knew was empty. A car's silhouette appeared, its headlights beaming for a heartbeat before the image dissolved into static. I paused the video, waited. Nothing. The screen stayed black. I felt a cold draft brush the back of my neck. The building's intercom crackled, a soft, static-laced voice saying, "All clear." I pressed the mute button, the static dying instantly. My monitor showed the lobby again, the plant swaying slightly as if nudged by a breath. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the glass. The camera's focus shifted subtly, as though someone had manually adjusted the lens. The view narrowed, centering on a single tile in the middle of the floor. On that tile, a faint imprint appeared, like a shoe sole pressed into dust that had never been there before. The imprint faded as quickly as it appeared, leaving the tile pristine once more. I stared at it, the silence around me becoming a thick, oppressive thing. No alarms, no footsteps, no doors opening, just the relentless glow of the cameras and the unexplainable movements they captured. When the power finally returned, the building's lights flickered back to life. I walked to the lobby, heart still pounding, to see the plant still upright, the floor spotless. The security logs showed no entries, no motion detected, no system errors. Yet the footage remained. Those fleeting shadows and the ghostly imprint on the tile, forever frozen in the black and white hum of the night shift. I still work the night watch, and I still trust my cameras. But sometimes, when the building is silent and the monitors are the only witnesses, I wonder if the darkness is watching back. Story 3. I never liked the third shift, but the pay was better, so I stayed. The job: monitor a 24/7 warehouse in the desert, miles from the nearest road. My world was a bank of 6 CCTV screens, a coffee machine, and the soft hum of the servers. Every night was the same, until the silence began. The warehouse was built for precision. Every camera had a purpose: 1 for the front gate, 2 for the cargo bays, and 3 for the inner vaults. The vaults were supposed to be empty, but I'd caught maintenance crews sneaking in before. Toolkits, lunch breaks, the occasional cigarette. Nothing strange, just the occasional flicker in the feed, which I blamed on the desert heat warping the wiring. Then came the silence. It started on a night when the wind died. The warehouse, usually a symphony of distant creaks and the whir of climate controls, fell utterly still. I sipped my coffee, eyes scanning the screens. The front gate camera showed the usual view: a dirt road, a sagging "no trespassing" sign, and the skeletal outline of a mesquite tree. But when I blinked, the tree moved. Not the wind. The branches twitched, as if something behind them were pressing against the glass. I leaned closer. The live feed showed nothing, just a static silhouette. I grabbed my flashlight and went outside. The mesquite tree stood lifeless, its leaves brittle. I shone the light around, expecting to see a raccoon or a trick of the light. Nothing. Just silence. When I returned to my booth, the camera feed had changed. The tree was gone. In its place, a figure stood in the dirt, faceless, arms folded stiffly at its sides. I froze. The camera wasn't panning. It was fixed, static. I checked the monitor settings. No tampering, no change in angle. My hands trembled as I hit replay. The figure hadn't been there moments before. It just appeared. Panic set in. I stared at the other screens. The vault cameras were clear, but the audio feed from the inner bay suddenly crackled to life. A low, rhythmic thud, like footsteps. I stood, heart pounding, and walked the empty halls. No sound. When I returned, the thudding resumed on the feed. Faster now, echoing down a hallway that hadn't existed 5 minutes ago. The screen showed a corridor lined with doors, each slightly ajar. My warehouse had no corridors. I shut down the system, unplugged everything, and left before sunrise. The manager laughed when I reported it. "Desert mirages," he said. But I kept the memory card from the camera, the one that shows the figure in the dirt when I glance at it in my rearview mirror on quiet nights. Now, I work a day job. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I swear I hear the silence again, and the faint twitch of something just beyond the frame, waiting to be seen.